composition worksheet. So I'm looking at number 1, and I'm just going to do parts A, D, F, and H to give you a little bit of a frame of reference with what we're doing and what we're talking about. Remember that this is a review topic. So I have f of 2 is what I'm asking for in part A. So first, what am I asking for when I'm saying f of 2? F of 2 is saying when x equals 2, what is y on the f graph? So the first thing I have to do is pick out which one of these graphs is y, which one's f and which one's g. So I could see here the linear equation is f of x. And what f of 2 means is I'm going to the x value of 2, so 1, 2, and going up to that y value on the f graph. So that would give me 3. Looking at part D, this is f inverse of 2. F inverse, remember that that's switching x and y. That's what an inverse is. So this is saying something like when y equals 2, what is x on the f graph? So now I'm sort of going through this the opposite way. I'm not looking at when is x2, I'm looking at when is y2. And I'm going over to that linear equation because that's the f graph. And I report the x value, which would be 1. Now, one thing with inverse functions, remember that there can only be one answer because we have to pass the horizontal line test in order to have an inverse. So since if I were to draw a horizontal line here, it would only go through this line, this linear equation once. That means that the inverse does exist. All right, looking at part F, we have g of f of -1. Remember that another way of looking at this is g of f of -1. So we're just going to start with this inner part, and I'll switch that color to something like blue. If I'm talking about f of -1, this is asking the same type of question as part A. So that means I'm going to x being -1. So here's x being -1. And I want to look at the f function. This is my f function. And I want to report the y value. So that would be 0. So now this becomes g of 0 because this whole thing, f of -1, is just 0. Well, now we need to go and do g of 0. So g of 0 means go to x being 0. Here's x being 0. And go to the g function. Here's my g function, the parabola, and report the y value. So this would just be 4. There's no operation I'm doing in between those. It's a composition of one function into another one. An example of an operation would be something like letter H, when we have f of 2 minus f of -1. F of 2, we're doing the same thing as what we did in part A, and we've actually already done that. We get 3. So this is going to be 3 minus f of -1. F of -1, we also did that really in part F, f of -1, which is what gave us 0. And then we just subtract 3 minus 0, so we get 3. So that's all we're doing in these function compositions. You're going to be interpreting function notation, looking at inverses a little bit, and then talking about those operations. But remember that when we're talking about like f of something, that means we're giving x and asking for y. An f inverse of something means we're giving y and asking for x.